Welcome back, Juventinita, to the Juventinita Back to Black and White podcast. My name's Daniel Lenegro, and I'm live from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. We're back again, episode number 34, and today's going to be a Calciomercato craze. We're going to talk about everything that has gone on in the market, and it's been a really shortened season. Summer season, if you want to call it that, and so it's kind of there's been a lot of twists and turns. It seems like every week there's something new being reported, shock report transfer that obviously a lot of you know now in Weston McKennie, but we'll get into that a little bit later. This is the bring on the loser of the Juve Quiz 2.0. So we're going to have Louis first, and then we're going to have Iskander next on. I'm just kidding, man. It was a hell of a time. Guys, check it out. I didn't mention in my last video, but guys, check out all the Juve quizzes. A lot of fun, a lot of jokes cracked, at least on our side. It was been a hell of a time, and I've been lucky enough, like I said, truly lucky enough, because when the questions fall the way they do, sometimes you get lucky, and fortunately enough, I'm in the finals. So again, check that out. That's probably going to be in a couple of weeks or a week or so. So stay tuned. And yeah, like I said, let's get into the boring stuff as always. I think I've missed this a couple times, but please smash the subscribe, guys. It helps me a hell of a lot. Drop a like. If you listen to the podcast on YouTube, click the bell for notifications. Obviously on iTunes and Spotify, subscribe as well. Drop a rating, comment. Anything helps. And especially on the video that Louis might not have seen. Well, he wouldn't have seen now, but it should be coming out before this podcast drops on the Juve Club identity versus brand. So guys, welcome to the show. Obviously, a big welcome to Louis, a guy from a Juve fan from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. What's going on, man?
Nothing much. Thank you for having me, bro.
Thank you for coming on. And yeah, that's another thing I wanted to mention that I forgot. Thank you guys for reaching out. It's been a crazy couple weeks. A lot of people reaching out to come on, and it's always nice to have a new guest, at least to this show. Obviously, Louis has been on a lot of podcasts with Al, and I believe a couple other. Were you on any of the other big YouTube accounts?
I do stuff with Juve Therapy and Roman, so I've done live streams in the quiz show. So
beautiful. So guys, check that out. And yeah, well, I'm sure we're gonna have you on a lot more, Louis, as well on this show. But just generally, what we like to do, I know like I said, you've been on Al, so I'm sure you've discussed how you became a Juve fan. But just generally to give the fans a kind of a sneak peek into how it all began for you with Juve, and at what generation, maybe a favorite player and stuff like that. The floor is yours, man.
My love for Juve began in 2006. I didn't know about Calciopoli or Serie A for Serie B, so I started watching this when we were in Serie B, because all the World Cup players, Cannavaro, Buffon, Del Piero, all those guys played for Italy, and they were big fixtures. So it was like, Juve was such a big part of that. And then I just stuck with them. I started to, as I became more of a fan, I started to learn more about the history. And those were some ugly years to start supporting Juve, but it's paid off the last decade or so.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people that are all in that era that stuck around, had to deal with a lot. So I think we've been almost conditioned for some, even though we're in good times when we're not necessarily playing well. It's really nice because a lot of times we can look back and say, hey, we were in a hell of a lot worse position than where we are now. So it's crazy.
To do is to, after we have like a shitty win, is to go back and watch like post Calciopoli highlights and remember that that's night and day from now. It's like, it's okay. It's like, okay. But
not that bad.
Yeah, not that bad. But my favorite player has always been Del Piero, and I think that's, like any Juve fan, that's how I fell in love. And currently, it's Dybala, so I like the number 10s.
Good, you didn't say Ronaldo, so you're still allowed to stay on the show. But no, anyways, guys, just jokes. But let's get right into it, because there is a hell of a lot going on. And I think we'll start off with, like I said, a video that's supposed to come out today. Unfortunately, you haven't seen it yet, but it's a pretty straightforward question, Louis. what Rocco, Ivan, and I talked about is essentially, did the brand Juve with the new logo change go too far? Now, there was kind of some different opinions thrown around. I thought we went too far. We kind of should have just modernized the logo. Rocco came up with an idea where maybe we have a sporting brand for the jerseys in the club, and then build an actual like clothing brand kind of where we can market with. And Ivan was on the, even though he says he's a traditionalist, he said that we were on point with, going with this new J, obviously removing the name and trying to build this brand. I kind of want to get your thoughts on that because, again, like I said, you'll see the video come out today, and but just on that premise, what do you think? What's your opinion on it? I'd like to hear.
Well, I hate the J logo. I've never liked it. It's weird. I'm getting used to it, but it still like makes me mad when I see it. I'm a little traditionalist. Like I like the crest. I think that there's something you said, like all the big clubs have like, a logo for the brand and the crest on it. Like if you look at FC Barcelona, the crest is still there and like, the lettering's there. So I think that Juve could do a mixture of that and, keep the traditionalists and, modernize. I was interested in what you said about maybe separating them where it's like, for kits or, certain kits, you keep the crest, but maybe for your clothing line, you have the J Corp kind of logo, right? Which would be, kind of interesting. It's a little bit of both. And, clothes is kind of where that modern brand is going to go anyway.
Right.
Overall, with Juve, aside from the logo, like some of the new jersey stuff, like the stripes, it's gotten a little crazy. I mean, no one can really say, as cool as some of them were, like the Poland kit from last year, the red and white. Nobody can really say like that's Juventus colors, right? We're used to stripes, pink, yellow and blue. Like, I just think that sometimes it goes a little too far.
Yeah, then you're almost like, are we just trying to follow a prescribed formula that Adidas is throwing out for all the clubs? Because as you've noticed, I mean, they're using a lot of templates. There's clubs this year that are, I believe Lyon actually has our blue like cloud kit, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That's going to be one of their jerseys this year. So, I mean, to me, there was also an argument on Twitter. Me and Juve AJ were talking about, regional, identity slash being the presence in the area, and that Adidas is the only, let's say, Italian or Giant is the only team that has is with you. Obviously, Adidas is with the Juve, excuse me, and Nike is with obviously Adidas, with Roma and Merda, and I guess Milan is with Puma. So he was kind of making the argument that we want to dominate the stores of Italy. Now, for me, that's not necessarily an argument because we already are dominating the stores in Italy. So whether we're with Nike or we're with Puma or we're with Kappa, or they're putting Juve jerseys everywhere in Italy now, front of the line, stock in the shelves. So I don't see that being a problem. So I don't get necessarily why that. How I see it is when you have Nike, let's say, because those are really, you're going to be your two competing companies that are going to be able to give us enough money. Now, when we bring a guy in with Ronaldo, and I don't want to get too deep into this because I'm also going to have a couple, we're going to talk about the kicks guys. We're going to talk about the jerseys. I have a couple Roma jerseys coming in, the authentics, and I'm going to have the authentic, all three authentic Juve jerseys coming in. So we're going to do some comparison, some contrasting, see what I like. I think they did a hell of a job for Roma. Nike did this, even though it's going to be their last year. I think those kits are class, true to their name. And they might not be getting as much money as us, but I don't see Adidas, with 51 million euros coming in, we're still well below the other clubs. Let's just call it what it is. We're well below, even that's with adding Ronaldo. So that's the problem I see. Then you look at, certain shoes. We should have been in there, get a shoe line, get whatever. And I know now we are going to have a second one coming out, which I'm probably, I'm going to buy all this, guys. Like you said, these jerseys aren't really to normal, but I'm going to get the orange jersey. I'm going to get the navy blue jersey we got this year. That's not the problem I see with me. I'm talking about the fans that are on the fence. The Ronaldo fans, the the fans that maybe don't have are watching football and they don't necessarily know who to cheer for yet. Those are the people that we need to attract. And as a club, we're talking about North America, we're talking about Asia, we're talking about Africa, South America. Europe, I think, is pretty regional as is. You're not going to move the needle too much, because allegiances are kind of set.
Yeah.
Maybe in Portugal you have a little bit of sway because obviously we have Ronaldo on the team, but for the most part, it's pretty good, right?
I don't know. I think that you have a player like Cristiano Ronaldo, right? And you want to sway like people in America like that. People in America, like if they're not fans, they're buying it because they like either the name or they like the way the jersey looks. And I don't see many Americans with our alternate or away kits,
Well, and that's a good question. So this, when I get into arguments with Ronaldo fans all the time. Okay, that's no surprise to anybody.
Oh, everyone.
But the question, well, no, I go real high. I dig real deep with Ronaldo fans. But when I get into it, I always ask them, and they never answer because they know what the answer is, and it's how many kits do you buy with Ronaldo on the back? And the question, it's an easy answer. They're buying one kit maybe from the first year, and that's it. They talked about there was this talk about this massive blowout of how many jerseys were bought. Well, I like to see how many jerseys were bought this year, and then obviously sequentially this year, with these new stripes, with the painted stripes, because that's what's going to move the needle, right? When we're talking about Calciomercato, a lot of people just like to throw out, well, Juve's got a lot of money and we're bankrolled and we have all this money because we're so smart. It's not as easy as that. Yeah. And a surprising thing that I saw, and I don't know if you saw this image, Louis, again, still on this branding conversation. Did you see the soccer.com or it was a separate company that released the numbers from soccer.com in the US about which states sold the most jerseys specifically from their site? Mm-mm. So basically there was, it was all over the board. California, I believe, was PSG. Texas, I believe, also was PSG. And actually, let me get that right because I know Florida was the biggest state. And quite frankly, we had, I believe, West Virginia, and which is surprising because I got to shout out. There's someone from Virginia that is just watching all of my videos. So I got to shout out to him because I don't think I've met this person. So thank you for listening on the podcast. But so it really, does, in 5 years or so that we've had Adidas or whatever it's been, I don't see really an impact. Like, do you think Adidas is really pushing? Because you got to remember, they got Real Madrid, they got Bayern.
Yeah.
Now they got Arsenal, Man U.
And those are all bigger brands.
So did we kind of jump? And that's kind of my thing with Juve AJ was, did we jump into the wrong pile? Because now you have to, you're trying to become a global brand. You're not trying to become the top. And everyone keeps saying, oh, we're top Italian brand. Oh, we have the most follows in Italy.
It goes back to the Agnelli comments where he's always talking about trying to, get to where City and PSG are, which is fine. But at the end of the day, like City and PSG, built a brand on their own terms. Right. We're kind of like trying to appease every part of it.
Yeah,
we're stretching ourselves out. So I think the club has to look really hard at how they market. I mean, we talked pre-podcast about their social media is awful. Barcelona does they'll do pre-match episodes. They'll show the team eating a pre-meal or what they do post-match. Juventus doesn't do any of that. They have the training clips, fine, but there are things that they could do that is better. And I think that probably would help in the jersey department. Also, not having orange leopard skin kits, but that's another story.
Yeah, so I have the map here, guys, and let's see if you guys can. I don't know if I can get this, and I could probably put it up, but there's your map. Freeze up for a little bit. All right, so just to say, Texas has got PSG, which I was pretty surprised. Same with California. again, you got to take this with a grain of salt. This is from one store. I know it is a massive store. I've bought from them many times because that was really the only source of finding, legit jerseys in this side of the Atlantic. So you have New York having Man U. We got who do we got for Pennsylvania? PSG again. Michigan's got Man U. Juve's got Utah, Wyoming, and Florida and West Virginia. So I'm shocked with that one. But anyways, yeah, no, it's weird. It's a really weird map, but I think in general, you're never gonna get the whole pie. So again, it's take it with a grain of salt, guys. But I think what Juve's got to do is go back to what it is, because when this reign of Ronaldo is done, I think there's going to be a massive drop in fans. Like,
Yeah.
I think you got to that, and that's why I say you got to appease. Even like Rocco brought up this two-tier system where if you want to, let's say, a brand for the club that tries to appeal to brands and whatnot, that's fine. But I think sporting wise, you have to have an identity where I've seen so many different edits of Juve logos where it's modernized. It's very similar to what we had. It looks good. I don't think anyone would have a problem using it as a brand. And you look at what PSG did. I think that's a perfect example. They got in with Jordan, and whether you like Jordan as a player or not, I mean, his kicks sell. I've seen those in Canada all over the place, even in somewhere like Calgary, where we have about 1 million people. In our House of Hoop store, which is again something with Foot Locker, they had pretty much all of their merch there. Maybe not the shoes, because if they're limited, they'll sell out. But they had the shirts, the gym shirts, whatever, jackets, all that. So that's something that I think Juve doesn't go far enough. And it's almost, to me, it becomes cheap talk when we start saying, oh, we want to be this brand, we want to do this, we want to do that. And like you said, you're not showing videos. To the fans, it pisses us off more seeing those training videos, because we're like, look how hard they're trying to portray them practicing now. And then we go watch a game and we see, what the hell is this shit? Did they even learn anything in training? So that's kind of my take on that. But I appreciate you filling in. Do you have any last words kind of on what Juve needs to do?
Fire their social media team.
Plain and cut and dry, guys. Cut and dry. But anyways, so let's get into, obviously, Pirlo came in. This has been, again, I've seen a lot of optimism. I'm not going to lie, guys. We've had some negativity saying, and I would say I would be a little bit, I'm more of a little bit skeptic. I still believe in the coach. At the end of the day, you always got to give your support at the beginning, because you don't know what's going to happen. But I'm a little skeptical on what's going to happen at the beginning of the season. So what are your thoughts, obviously, on the ending of Sarri and then picking a coach like Pirlo? And essentially, how do you see us lining up this year? I mean, it's going to be interesting. There's been a lot of talk, so let's get your thoughts, Louis.
So on Sarri, first off, I think Sarri was a bad move in general. I got behind it because, for whatever reason, I trust our club. I'm a little bit more skeptical of the board now than I was last year. But I just think with Sarri, you went from Allegri, where you had your winningest period ever, where you had a coach that we were doing the double every year but won 2 UCL finals. And then you hire a guy that's never won anything before. So there's a huge drop-off. Now you're giving him Buffon, Chiellini, Bonucci, Dybala, Ronaldo, and then you didn't back him with signings. That was just always a bad mix. And I think that firing him was the right move. Losing to Lyon was unacceptable. Moving forward, the Pirlo thing is kind of crazy to me. I am optimistic, but when it happened, I was very, very skeptical, because this is a guy that has never coached before. He was your U23 coach 10 days ago, and it was almost like you called Pochettino, and he said he asked for too much money, and you weren't bringing back Allegri, so you're just like, oh, there's Pirlo, we'll hire him. But moving a little bit forward, looking at his press conference and some of the other things, and I don't want to get too hyped over his press conference, because that's the last thing you want to do. It was really refreshing. I mean, he spoke like a Juventus fan. You know, he talked about culture, DNA, wanting to bring back enthusiasm, but, you know, that hunger that's kind of missing. And I think all Juve fans on Twitter can agree the thing that has really lacked since Cardiff really has been hunger, desire. You know, the Juventus used to be fearless in the Champions League, and now you watch them play, and everyone except for Ronaldo and maybe Dybala play scared. Like that's when I watch them, that's the impression I get, is that is a terrified team of Europe. And I think that you have a coach that's a little bit more cool, a little bit more calm-headed. You know, he's talking about bringing in enthusiasm, like winning the ball back, playing proactive, which is the future, but also not moving away from like who we are as a club, which I think he didn't get the Juventus model. I think Pirlo understands that. Now, what we would play under Pirlo, just based on like rumors in his press conference, I think we're going to see a combination of what we saw with Conte in the team's mentality, and then what we saw Allegri, which is the team's flexibility in those first 3 years. Because in the first 3 years, we play 3-5-2, 4-3-1-2. Sometimes he would, in the year we went to Berlin, we played on the back four, and they sub Barzagli on, it'd be a 3-5-2 at the end of the match. You know, in Cardiff, we were like the 3-5-2, 4-2-3-1 formation. Yeah. So I think we'll see probably like a mix of a back three, back four. Who's in it, I think, is going to be his biggest job is, you know, finding the right mix. I think to start, we'll see probably a little bit of what we saw last year. You know, we'll see Bonucci play probably with Chiellini and, you know, like Sandro and people like that until we get into the thick of things. But I think that back three, however it is, mixing with the back four, I think is a lot of what we'll see this year.
Yeah, I think that another big question is the Mercato, right? What we're lining up to talk about today. And I think, you know, that's the biggest question, because there's a lot of, you know, thoughts of last year that are creeping in again in terms of Dybala playing as the trequartista, as in his typical 10 role, depending on how we line up. Now, we'll get into, you know, a few quotes actually of what Pirlo said, but in terms of how I think the lineup's going to, again, like you said, it's going to depend on who's injury free as well, because you got to remember, with three at the back, is Chiellini going to be ready? How's Demiral going to be? I'm sure he's going to be back. Bonucci should be good, but De Ligt, he's out till October. So
yeah,
really, if you play with the three, you're hoping those guys are playing the full 90, because the only guy you have left, I don't see Romero staying. We'll get into that later, but a lot of these young guys, I think, aren't going to stay. So who's going to be your sub? Rugani again? Like,
yeah,
that's what it works out to be. And then, okay, you want three at the back now. How do you play? Do you play 3-5-2? I don't know about that, because where does Ronaldo? And some people are saying 3-5-2 and put Ronaldo as the wing back. It's like, okay, well, what do you want to cut off your one of your arms, because he ain't running back? I'll tell you, he's not playing the defensive side, so he's not your cover. So that's not going to work. Okay, what's another option? 3-4-1-2, where you have maybe you keep again Ronaldo possibly as a striker and Dybala, depending on who you keep. Are you going to sign a Dzeko, or are you going to sign a Milik, or whoever, or Keane? Possibly again Ronaldo in a striker position.
Yeah,
I don't know about that.
I see it as a 3-5-2 that mixes with the 3-4-3 or like a 4-2-3-1 kind of thing. You know what I mean?
And that's where I was getting to. That's kind of where I see the only way you do this with the three with Ronaldo. And this is why I give Ronaldo fans shit all the time, is because when you have a player like him, and if he was like, you know what, I'll play striker, I'll play left wing, I'll play right wing, that's fine. But once you say, I can only play left wing, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to throw a tantrum. I'm not going to like it. I'm going to walk out of this. The other thing.
That's him, or you think that's...
Oh, that's definitely him. 100% him.
I think it's 50-50. Because
he's asked for it. He's asked for it in the past. I think when he walked...
I think that when you have a great player like that, he says, hey, I'm better on the left. Like Lionel Messi always says, like, hey, I like to play on the right, drift into the left, right?
Oh, so I get that, but when we look at a team like this, right, where we don't have that midfield, we don't have a Benzema on the team, We don't have the midfield like the Real Madrid. We don't have the fullbacks like Real Madrid. So then when you say we have to confine that position is essentially locked, you're free. Even with Allegri, I noticed his freedom to move was still kind of hampered in with Ronaldo being on the left side. So it does hem you in that approach where you aren't as flexible to, let's say, rotate. And it's not like he comes out. If Ronaldo was a player that was like, you know what, it's not working or he's not having a great game and we don't have to worry about him getting pissed off coming off the pitch getting subbed, then I would say, hey, no problem.
Also, too, on the pissed off being subbed argument, I mean, Dybala throws a tantrum every time.
No. But my point is this: when we are essentially locked in with Ronaldo at the left wing, so you're like I said, you're forced into. You can't play around with 3-4-1-2. You can't play with 3-5-2. Essentially, if you're going to go 3 at the back, you have to go 3-4-3, right?
But so what I think you could do tactically with it, and I'm sorry to cut you off, is
no, go ahead, man.
Take someone like Kulusevski or Bernardeschi, who they like to drift out wide and they'll come back in. You could say you could start Ronaldo on the left, and he likes to just cut right through that diagonal, and then you could play Dybala right there, or a number 9 like a Suarez or Dzeko, and even Moise Kean are good off the ball. You could kind of mix that 3-5-2. I think it's doable. Sometimes I think with Italian technicians, though, they're too in place, they're too pragmatic. Yeah. So that Sarri, if you watch this play the 4-3-1-2, Sarri's you have to stay right here. And you see Dybala and Ronaldo, there was the Lyon game where they were just this is frustrating, right? So I think that partially, and I understand, I think Ronaldo is a huge part of it because he's a huge presence. I mean, so how do you tell a guy that scores 40 goals a year,
right?
Don't play on the left where you're scoring 40, play right here where you're uncomfortable.
Oh, so I'm not, in terms of that, I'm not trying to make that argument. I'm just trying to say that it kind of hems you in. Again, you're more likely to, you're going to make it work, right? Like you said, you're going to find ways to make it work. But I'm saying in terms of, the strategy, that's really the only system that fits. Yeah, you can have guys, and I agree. I think Kulusevski could go, and I think Dybala would. I think a 3-4-3 could work. But you're almost kind of that's what you got to do, or you got to go 4-3-3. In terms of other formations, I mean 4-2-3-1. It depends on who we pick up. Again, our right back position, is that can even be taken care of? I don't know. There's been talk of some players for that. We'll see. Pellegrini, is he coming back? We'll see, but we'll get into that. But let's get in. Let's talk about a couple of the comments he made, and then we'll get really into the transfers. So he talked about, and I thought his press conference was pretty straightforward. He kind of said everything that he wanted us to hear. Yeah. Especially say Juve's goal is always to win. It's not easy, but that's what we're here for. Kind of saying this is what the role he's been put in, and I know experience has been talked about a lot, not playing any, and a lot of people were trying to downplay it, like Zidane and Pep and other coaches didn't have as much experience. I mean, he is going to come in with his only game. This will be his first game, will be his only game. His license is still not taken care of. So it's going to be interesting. I think Igor Tudor is going to be an interesting add. I think they were smart enough to build, a group of coaches around him with Baronio and Tudor that hopefully can help him out. And maybe he's the main man, but you have guys adding on their information and tactics and whatnot, and giving him a hand, either offensively, defensively, whatever it is. So I think that's good. But in terms of players, I really liked how the news came out and said that he was calling guys that were going to go. I hope that Khedira's on his way out. I'm just gonna say that right now. If he gets away with this one, he truly is his name is now the Teflon Don from now until eternity. And I don't think anyone can get away from that. But there's a lot. But it's tough. It's tough to move. I mean, for me, it would have been give him his money and send him packing. Because when you look at a player like this, I don't see him dealing with us. I think he's gonna sit on what he's gonna making. He signed the contract. He's got every right to.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say that, but I mean,
Khedira is a mistake that they made, prior. Just like one could argue that Higuain was a long-term mistake,
right?
But I think when you talk about like the staff is obviously very good. It's good that you have Buffon, Chiellini back,
Right.
Dybala, some of these people. Even like if Ronaldo buys in, like who else isn't going to buy in? If your couple best players buy in, that's I think will be helpful. I think though some of those other it was really good that he established right away like, hey, the objective is to win. We win here, because I think that sometimes fans I know on Twitter forget that like Juventus hasn't just won 9 Scudettos. Like that is a huge marker, right? To have that there. Like I understand, like I want to win the Champions League, but you have to do the double almost every year. That's your the Scudetto, the Coppa Italia probably, but I think it's a huge marker, and it's good to let the rest of the league know, hey, yeah, we've gotten a little weaker, but it's still ours to lose.
Right. And, he talks about Tudor. He's an experienced assistant, obviously with Udinese. He was coaching Udinese, and I believe he was with Split before, but that's all taken care of, as has been reported, and everything's been signed, sealed, and delivered. So, he's got a certain type of personality, former defender, and like I said, I think that's going to be good. But Khedira talked about, we'll see when he returns from his injury period, and now I've heard some reports that he's talking about, we'll see where we can fit him in, and I think that's just the wrong move.
Yeah.
They talked about Higuain being out of the picture. I'm surprised he didn't go that far in talking about Khedira that way. Coming out that blatantly and saying, "We've just talked. We're gonna part ways or separate ways. We're gonna find a way to do it." And to me, that was interesting to see that whole take place in the press conference. Let's talk about the enthusiasm must be brought day by day, talking with the players, making them participate and getting into their heads our way of playing. The most important thing is to make them understand what we want. And again, you touched on it. I think the grinta level has been gone for a long time. I think the motivation level has been gone a long time. I would say from almost the whole team.
Yeah.
I think Buffon and Chiellini and some of the senators can only do so much in that aspect. I mean, to get a player to, put their heart on the line when really they're making all this money, and that's been a problem. I think a lot of guys have been checked out for quite some time and just content with making the money that they're owed. At the end of the day, and you could say, it's with COVID, it's been tough, away from families and going to game, and being tough. But I think the previous year was pretty much the same thing. So you can't use that really as an excuse.
That issue has been there for 2 years now. It's just, Juventus, they look flat. They look like, okay, we're going to play this game. We'll win it 1-2-0, collect the points, and move on, right? It's night and day from everyone else. And I think that the good thing about this is, if Pirlo's a smart coach, he would be saying right now, hey, everyone, this is our standard. Everyone thinks that we're not good enough to do this anymore. So they're saying you guys aren't good enough.
I agree.
Integrate our heads right away.
Some of the other important things, he obviously talked about Ronaldo and Dybala being there and kind of confirming that Dybala wasn't for sale. I know there was some heated exchanges on Twitter about who thought what, like in terms of which player is going to be leaving, which player is going to be saying who wants to sell who. I mean, to me, I think any idea of getting rid of Dybala before Ronaldo is crazy.
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
I'm right there with you.
I'm not suggesting that we are selling Ronaldo. Let me get that out there straight, because people were trying to conflate those two ideas, that me saying that I want Dybala to stay means that I want to get rid of Ronaldo. No, that's not the case. I'm saying if we had to get rid of one or the other, I'm definitely moving on from Ronaldo if that's an option, because, and what a lot of the times that gets on me is, I'm talking with Juve fans that then Ronaldo fans get brought in, and guys, they don't give a shit at the end of the day. They would, like, people have been saying, yeah, let's bring in Messi and get rid of Dybala. Like, guys, do you want the team completely stripped at the end of this, when they retire? Like, this is a business. This is reality. This is not FIFA. This is not PES. This is an actual business, and you know, when the party ends, who are you going to be left with?
Yeah, exactly.
So, who are you building your team around? And it's just, to me, it was kind of ridiculous. The people saying that, no, this is, if you want to win now, it's like, well, why would I sacrifice winning in the long term multiple times to win a Champions League now? I don't get
I asked fans that do that. I asked them, like, what's the impression we're going to win now? I mean, this is the club that has the most losses in the Champions League history. So, like, yes, I understand, like, we have the ability to win, but just because we have a player that's a serial Champions League winner, I mean, you've seen it the last 2 years. Obviously, something is broken in the club, or we just haven't been able to get it done. On the Ronaldo Dybala sale thing, if you're Juventus, you can't move either of those two people. I saw a stat this week that they scored more goals than Liverpool's front three, who many consider is the best front three in the world. So, and that's two players without, the goals from Higuain, who had, 11 or 12 this year. So I think if you gave that team a legitimate midfield, could you imagine what those two could do next year? Legitimate midfield and, like, one winger that bangs in more than a goal a year.
Yeah.
And is healthy for more of the year.
Yeah, true enough.
I love Bernardeschi for the national team, but he scored less goals than De Ligt last year.
Well, yeah, and I think he just needs a restart. I just think he needs a reboot. And a lot of players do need it when they go to a big club and it just doesn't work out.
Yeah,
I think you just got to cut your loss. I know a lot of people are saying, yeah, well, we can have him. And I know even Pirlo mentioned, or, Raiola's mentioned he's got a big part to play Juventus. And I believe Pirlo made some comments as well. But to me, I think it's just time to, move on. If we can get him in a swap to bring in any of the players that have been mentioned, I think.
Yeah. I think we'll have him one more year when the market expands. Hopefully we'll be able to have fans in the stadium, like, at some point this year.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, it's going to be difficult, man.
The other thing is, too, on a player like Bernardeschi, and I think this is why the Dybala thing keeps coming up, is because these players that need to go, nobody wants them.
Yeah.
Like, I read that United offered $27 million for Douglas Costa, and Juventus they're trying to break even with the 40. And it's like, well, that's the situation you're in. Like, who in their right mind is going to pay $40 million for Bernardeschi after he scored 5 goals in 3 years?
Well, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
And same thing like Rugani. So it's like your hands are almost tied where you have to sell Dybala because you made so many bad decisions. That's like, and I'm not saying to sell him. I make that clear. You should never ever touch Paulo Dybala.
But that's where your money is.
Yeah, that's the reason why that keeps coming up.
Exactly, and I mean it's common sense. I mean, anyone who doesn't see that, I can see that.
Yeah,
he's got the most inherent value that we could capitalize on, which I agree 100%. But I think there's multiple, like you said, there's multiple decisions in that. But this is kind of the thing with Juve, where I got on Allegri's back for, because everybody was saying, "Oh, it's okay, we're winning these games." But you know what else? If this was only a one-dimensional puzzle, I could say, hey, we look like shit, but we're still winning the Scudetto. We lost in Champions League, whatever. We lost this year in Champions League. We lost before in Champions League, whatever. But this is a 5, 6, 7-dimensional puzzle. When you look like shit, your players also get devalued so much that you can't sell them. And that was a massive thing. So you'd have Allegri, who didn't want to play anyone, didn't want to play Marchisio, didn't want to play Rugani, didn't want to play XYZ because he didn't trust them or whatever. He had his favorite, and now their values are in the shitter. So we go into a situation with Mandzukic. We go into a situation with Emre Can.
But
we go in.
Even on top of that, though, like Paratici, the year that we sold Kadar, which, with fair, Kadar was awful at Milan, we had a $50 million offer on the table for Rugani. You already knew that you had a young center back coming in, and you're like, no, we're going to keep that because we have plans for this guy. And then it goes back, like Mandzukic was given a 3-year deal at 33 years old. You're like, and everyone, I love Mario Mandzukic, but last year everyone could see he was slowing down just a little bit. Right?
Yeah. I mean, he had a year where he went to a World Cup final and then was pretty much driven into the ground because he was played almost every game because that's what was working. Yeah, 100%. I mean, he would have been nice. We had some moments where we saw we could have used him now, but I mean, at the end of the day, something like that, even the Moise Kean deal, people have been going back and forth on talking about. I don't see it. I see you get rid of those players. It is what it is. But yeah, look, Juve's got to face the noise now because these are the deals that hamper us.
Yeah.
So, and when you have players that get undervalued, that just shows you that okay. So what happens now? We got to move players that we actually are going to need in the future because they only have value. And you stay again. It's a vicious cycle that we have to get out at some point. So it's either he does that Paratici or he's gone. That's all I can say. If you can't figure it out, there's no place at Juve for you, to be honest.
Yeah, right there with you, honestly.
But let's get into some of the names because there's been a lot. I mean, it's like almost every week we're getting someone new. Someone doesn't want to come, then they do want to come. Then Pirlo likes them, then maybe he's not the right op. Then Jorginho is in, maybe. So there's been, depending on who's the coach. So let's just go first with the number 9s because that's something that's kind of been identified as a need, right? I would say number 9 we need some help in the midfield. Obviously, we've added Artur and Kulusevski and fullbacks. So that's the 3 categories I've broken it down into. So again, something with the number 9s, we got to get rid of Higuain, get rid of that contract. That's first things first for me. Then you have options. You got Milik has been tossed around at the beginning of this whole end of the season. You've had Dzeko that's now kind of emerged. Raul Jimenez from Wolves has been talked about kind of early, but a big valuation around 80 million euros. I don't see that happening, just to say right off the bat. And now what's emerged is Moise Kean coming back. Now, let's go with Milik. What are your thoughts on him? Did you think he was obviously an injury-prone player? Were you liking bringing him? Obviously, I believe the valuations were somewhere around 40, 50 million. We were trying to swing Bernardeschi in, but, Napoli wasn't playing.
I wouldn't pay for him, but if it was in the swap deal, I could be okay with it. It's not ideal, but again, whoever that number 9 is not a starter, in my opinion. He's coming off the bench for Paulo Dybala. So I think that Milik could do that role. The question is just, would he be healthy? So I'd probably say I'd be 65-35 in favor of not making the move. Okay. That's a good shout. And I agree too. And that's another problem we have. You just mentioned it. Perfect. Dybala, right? Yeah. Now, if you bring in a guy, the next guy I'm going to ask, Dzeko, there's been reports now that we're going to be, I believe the fee is pretty much nothing, maybe 5-10 million euros, whatever it was. But the contract being at 7.5 mil a season is okay, so we're just going to get rid of 7.5 from Higuain, and now we're going to replace with Dzeko. It's like a guy who's still older. I was all for the Dzeko move until I saw the contract. And that's why I was like... Now, all rumored, right, guys? That's, from as far as we know, that's what's been talked about. I mean, hey, unless something changes or we hear something else, this is kind of what we're going to go off of, right? Just on hearsay. But Dzeko as a player, he's not going to start over Dybala. But if Juve said, hey, we're playing, like Olympiacos in the Champions League, and we'd rather go with a big number 9 and spread the field than like cluster it up with a number 10. Fine, like Dzeko could do that job.
Gives us options.
Yeah, he had a good year at Roma last year, but the deal would have to be like, hey, it's a one-off, or maybe it's a 2-year with like not a lot of money. I think again we go back to Paratici. Like this is something you have to be like. The rumor is that Dzeko wants to join Juve because he wants one last shot at winning. Okay, if you want to win, take some money off. We can't give you a ton, like he told Pogba. The Pogba thing came up. So like, yeah, you should play hardball with some of these people. And if that's not the person, I'm sure Luis Suarez, who currently has no team, would be like, yes, I'd take the backseat role and make less money. Now, I don't think we should sign Suarez either, but that's just hypothetical.
Well, that's where I was going to go next. Suarez, who I didn't mention like previously, but there's also been talks now. What he wants, I mean, there's been talks left and right of being a low amount, but I've also seen him making 16 million, I believe now. Yeah. So I don't know necessarily where we start with that, right? Like, I don't know if we want a Suarez though. I mean, these guys are all older players. And who's going to rock the boat and who's going to accept the role? You look at Cavani too, was talked about, right? Like, I believe he's did he sign with Benfica? Yeah, I'm not sure if that is. Yeah. So that's off the table now. But he was even talked about. You get him in for a year or two.
The big thing about like a player like Suarez, the only like real reason if he was able to take a role is like we talked about team mentality, and you just. Right. That guy's a killer, right? I mean, he's past as bad as he can't stay healthy, which is a huge marker. But again, Juventus' huge problem in the Champions League is that they don't have a player with like a killer mentality. But again, they would have to evaluate what kind of money he wants to make, what kind of deal he's looking for, what kind of role the coach would want to use him in. And there are a lot of variables there. I just think there's too many variables with Suarez. It's an interesting idea. Just too many uncertainties right now.
Right. So I think, like I said, Cavani was a similar position free agent. I think Cavani would have worked because I think he's kind of used to the backup role. So I'm surprised that, and apparently we were offered him. Whether that's true or not, that's something we'll get into kind of at the end. Kind of talking about, journalists and who are your favorites and who you like to, listen to and who you believe in, kind of the journalistic integrity. And I've talked about it once before. I just find that we're getting to a level of this quick action, quick fire everything out of the barrel as quick as you can, whether it's right or not. And then it confuses the shit out of everyone because we're like, well, we were offered Cavani, we weren't. He didn't want to go there. Messi wants to go. So it's like
I don't think we ever looked at Cavani. I don't think that was ever like a realistic move. I think that they probably saw like what he makes, and they were like, and I think Cavani publicly has said like I wouldn't join Juventus
because of the Napoli thing. Yeah,
and I think like if it was a larger window where we had 3 months, I think there would be some credibility to it. But that short amount of time, Juventus, one thing I will give them is they haven't wasted time on anything. Like they have gotten a lot of stuff done pretty quickly.
With the Matuidi and stuff like that. Yeah. I think next we're going to go into Raul Jimenez. I think that's kind of was a pipe dream, especially when they started saying 80 million. I think that eliminated us immediately, unless they were willing to swap, which... When you start hearing rumors of clubs wanting 80 to, whatever, to infinity and beyond, I don't see that. That's a non-starter in my opinion. And then lastly, from Everton, who's now kind of denied even wanting to let him go, Moise Kean. I don't know if I want this guy back. We talked about mentality.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's got it. I hate to throw in the name Balotelli, but I've seen him do stuff, not showing up to practice, not being professional. I mean, is it that simple when you're making a few million a year, however many millions he makes a year to show up to practice on time with the Azzurri or not? I mean, hey, everybody can have their opinion.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's what I've seen.
There's a fair argument for that, because when you have a player that bursts on the scene like he did at 18, there has to be something more than the club just wanting to balance the books to be like, yeah, we'll let this guy go. Because the deal they let him go for wasn't even that great.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think a little bit like Cancelo, who everyone loved, I think the club saw something there that maybe they weren't so sure about. And I think that there's enough evidence to support that Kane had some issues, off the field. Will I take him back or not? I mean, given if it's a 2-year loan, like that's not a bad move,
Right.
I think in that I wouldn't pay 33 million for him, but 2-year loan, like I could do it. If Ramsey went the other way, that frees up like a huge wage bill. But I think for me, it's probably, and this will be unpopular, but it's Ed Dzeko, and then probably Moise Kean for me.
All right. Nice. For me, I don't know. It's we hit September 1st in a couple days.
Yeah.
And let's see if we're off to the race or not. I think, again, I don't mind the Dzeko move. I think it's good, but I don't like that contract.
Yeah.
So to me, if you bring someone around, let's say 2 to 5 million, whatever the term, I'm happy. That's not an incredibly, for me, you look at, and I'm really, interested in hockey, because they have the salary cap. So
yeah,
again, there's rules. Anyone on your third line and your fourth line can't be making over, 2-3 mil a season, because it just completely fucks with everything. So fortunately, Calcio's not like that, but I mean, I kind of have a little bit of insight in terms of that and trying to balance books with that and my business sense as well. But yeah, no, for me, I wouldn't mind Ja. I think he's a good player. I think he's played really well the last season. I think it's something that we could use. But again, for me, it's more of a making the financials work. And to me, I think there's, to say that there's not a lot of strikers out there, there are. It's just capitalizing on at the right price. So, we're, as a club, they're paying these scouts and management a lot of money. I think they got to make the right decision. And to me, I don't care who they bring in, as long as it doesn't really fuck with the club, then I'm happy, right? Yeah. I think there's a lot of good players out there. So, okay, we'll get into the centrocampisti next, midfield. Obviously, big name recently. Again, that's been pushing. Awade. I like to say Awade, like add the E and make it a little bit Italian. I know that's how you pronounce it, but fuck it. Yeah. So 50 million. His mom has come on and said that he wishes he could be a Juve player. I don't know. You have a president that's their president, whether he's lying or not, saying there's no truth to what's happening. There's also been rumors that everything's been signed and we're waiting for other moves to kind of trigger him going and signing the contract. So what are your thoughts? Obviously, we've had Artur added. You could say Kulusevski, whether you want him as a winger or a midfielder. Those are kind of your two additions. But where do you see, and obviously McKennie, which we'll get to kind of next, but with Awade, what do you think as a player? I think he's a phenomenal player. He burned us at least in our game, but
he's one of the best young midfielders in the world, and you've had the opportunity of having 3 good young midfielders. Because Bentancur, I think, is right up there potential wise. So if you could sign him, if they could do it financially, like, then do everything you can to do it. The issue is, can we do it?
And price is going up.
Yeah. If he's available and you can make the move, you should, because that's a really talented player. And I would take it 100%. But like I say, like when people get all excited about Paul Pogba, like, will it happen? I just, who have we sold? I mean, there's rumors we're going to sell Romero. Perrin's going back to Genoa, so that's got to be for nothing. Who are the players that you sold first? Like, you can't sell Douglas Costa, apparently. Nobody wants Rugani. Like, what are you going to do? Swap Demirel? Like,
and that's where the magic formula, like I say, always goes round and round. Like, we shoot ourselves in the foot because we don't sell right away. And I find we give it away. Like, we've had interest in this guy for like 4 months and made it like seemingly known, or the media has been made it seemingly known, and then we lose to Lyon, then Lyon goes and beats Man City. That value just keeps going up, and now all these other teams are kind of circling in, hey, who probably have deeper pockets and can get rid of players a lot easier than we can. So it's a vicious cycle with Juve. I don't know. I think this is gonna be a hard. I thought personally with Artur we were done.
Yeah.
I honestly thought we were done. Now, again, it depends on who wants to take the players on that we have. Again, like I said, that's to be seen, but I don't think we can make it done even if it's 50, 60 million.
Yeah. You have a huge
someone's got to go.
You have a huge issue with Ramsey and Khedira because again, those are bad
6 and 7. Yep, 6 and 7.
So
we'll see what happens on that front. I mean, I would like him too. I agree with you. Then we get into someone who we have signed, Weston McKennie, the cowboy from Texas, obviously.
USA.
There we go. So yeah, no, I call him Smith and Weston, but I call him Smith and Weston. So he's going to be our bomber there, one of our big guns in the midfield. But obviously, you've told me that you follow him quite a bit, Louis, and he's more of a CDM than anything. Someone, let's say like De Rossi, who's not going to score you maybe not as many goals, but someone who's going to put in a shift, and that's what he's talked about in his first interviews. If you heard.
Yeah, his first interview was very, very good. Just like, good impressions. Someone who talked about giving 100% for the shirt and about, Juve being a winning club in the standard. So he gets it right away. I think, I know a lot of people on Twitter didn't like the move. Most of Juve Twitter doesn't like the moves unless it's like prime Zidane. So, but I understand it. I think that Weston, what we'll get is you have a player that can play in the back three, can play any of the midfield positions. I mean, obviously he's more of a defensive type of midfielder. He's got a great touch. He can play a pass, good physical presence, and he can score goals. I mean, he might give you more goals than Matuidi did this season, which if he gives you 4 or 5, that's better than most of our wingers. So,
that is true. That is very true.
Well, I think it's a bit of a gamble. But the deal itself is very nice. It's a loan will obligation to buy for 60 if he plays 60% of the games. Which if he plays 60% of Juventus's games, is probably pretty damn good for us.
Right.
That's assuming we bring in one more midfielder.
For me, the only thing I worry about, and we talked about this a little bit before the podcast, is Juve's ability to flip young players. And the deal has the writing on the wall, in my opinion, where you have this very low $3 million that we're going to be giving up right up front, and then again, like you said, the 60% games. But I think Juve's not going to have a problem paying $18 million if you can almost double it, where you sell them in the end for like 50, 60 million.
Yeah.
I mean, the script to me seems like it's written, and as soon as I saw, because again, this came out of nowhere, guys. No one called this. It was literally
seeing things when I saw the tweet pop up.
Yeah, it was honestly came out of the west, took a right turn and landed in Turin. I mean, if anyone says that they knew this deal was happening, they're full of shit.
Yeah.
Because literally it was a shock, I believe, to almost every Juve fan, almost every journalist, and I think, I mean, I really have high hopes for this kid. I hope it can work, but I know how Juve is, and I always keep, whether you want to call that negative or not. I mean, to me, it's just being realistic on how Juve acts as a club. And to me, I hope that's not the case, but we'll see what happens. And hopefully he gets a jersey number, and hopefully he's waiting for number 6 because Khedira is going to be gone. So that'll be happy. I'll be happy if that happens. But obviously some other names to look at, like you said earlier, Pogba. I think it makes more sense next year. Like I've been saying in the past podcasts, his contract ends, and Raiola has said that he's not going to leave Man U this year. It's going to be make or break, whether he signs or not, and that's going to be the sign. If you don't see him sign by January, he's probably going somewhere, whether that be Real Madrid, whether that be back to Juve, whether that be wherever, Barcelona, whoever comes calling for him. And I'm sure with this whole Messi talk, they're probably going to look to add someone like that. I wouldn't be shocked if they tried to jump in on that being his last year of his contract this year. So we'll see what happens with Pogba. There's been discussion with DePaul about 40, 50 million. Yeah. Partey from Atletico Madrid, who I think is a phenomenal player. Mm-hmm. I think now we've kind of handled the CDM. Like you said, we've gotten McKennie. So I don't see us going in that route. I'm guessing Atleti didn't want the I believe it was Douglas Costa and Bernardeschi or Ramsey and one of our big contracts. So I don't see I don't see that working out. I think that's kind of why they moved on. Mm. And Saul's kind of been thrown out. I would love to see that, but I doubt he's probably going to go for over 100 million. I don't see that happening. But DePaul, what do you think of him as a player to add in?
I like DePaul a lot. It looks like according to Romano, he's Leeds bound. The issue for me with DePaul was always the price. Like 40 million for him is, again, really steep when you haven't sold anyone. But DePaul is what this midfield could need as a number 8, a guy that could get to the box, create, score some goals. I think going forward, if Aaron Ramsey isn't that player, then you need someone who can do that. Because right now what you have is a bunch of workhorse midfielders, but you don't have anyone that can get into the box and score goals, and that's a huge piece of what Juventus has been missing the last 3-4 years. Really since Khedira started getting injury prone.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because you lose that, and he was prone to score goals, Khedira. Let's not forget that. And when he's barely playing any games, and then no one else is taking that lead, and you don't have Marquisio now, and you don't have all these other guys that were, you don't have MVP squared, and you don't fix that, then you're lacking. I think that was perfect. I think that kind of sums up. Is there any kind of midfielders or even forwards that you think I've missed? Which I probably have.
Yeah, I think that midfielders, Locatelli is a name that I think we should look out for. I know he was linked with us. It's kind of died down because of the McKinney talk, but I think that's a player that, I think the big question is who plays the regista role, because like McKinney can play there, but I think he prefers to be like on the left-hand side. And Artur looks like they're going to try him there, which I like. We're not really sure if that's Bentancur's best position yet.
Right.
So I think that Locatelli could give you for a little bit, we have a player here that knows how to play that role until we figure out who else plays there. I also think Locatelli is as good as Sandro Tonali is. He's been in the Italy youth system for 3 years now. Just got called up to the national team, broke in at Milan. I know they were bad, but, Sassuolo played very good football. So I think that's a name where if we can't get someone like RR, that's a name that we should look at. And just for fun, there's a player from Rennes named Camavinga, something like that. Canvinga. The kid's really good. He led League One in tackles last year, and he scored a goal yesterday that looked like a young Paul Pogba. It was ridiculous.
So, there you go. Young shout. No, I'm going to build this list. So
yeah. Nobody talks about him, so yeah.
Well, it's good to hear because get the name out, because again, like you said, Tonali, that seemed like it's done and dusted. Now Milan seems to be opening the door on Merda. So, who knows what's gonna happen? Locatelli. Me and Jake have talked about this. Shout out Jake Vinciguerra. But he thinks he could be good. I think it would be good for Juve to sign him, but maybe leave him at Sassuolo. You kind of want to see how a player is going to react in a different, one different stage and two different, team role. It's easy when you don't have the pressure on you and you can go out there and, hey, if you have a bad game, whatever, or, you can play a little bit more free. Where at Juve, the pressure's always on, and every mistake, every little bad touch or bad pass, it's going to be scrutinized every day of the week. So, is it a little bit too big? I'm not sure. That's up for him to and for the club to decide. I think it's a good kind of shout, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, that could be an interesting move too that I forgot. Yeah, but thanks for bringing that one up.
One last thing on the midfield. I think that the next move should probably be for a number 8. I know I mentioned Locatelli, but if we could get that like attacking, midfielder that could score some goals, I think we could do a lot with that. And Kulusevski might be that, but a genuine number 8 would be kind of cool if we could find.
Yeah, and I know they've mentioned him being a midfielder, but I really just want him on the wing.
Yeah, because
and we'll get into who's to leave at the end, because and that's kind of the reason why I kind of want him to go up. Let's get into fullbacks now. Obviously, there hasn't been a hell of a lot of names. I know Serginho Dest has been kind of the main guy, but I think it's just a lot of paper talk.
Yeah.
I know they've been saying, oh, we're in talks with, and then obviously Hateboer from Atalanta has been mentioned as well. I think we're solid with Alexandro on the left back position. I think very underrated in my honest opinion. I'm probably going to get hate for that, but that's fine. Pellegrini, you'd hope he could stay. I mean, I'm not sure how he is in the injury front, if he's back 100% or not, but you have to look at that and say, are we going to play another year with Cuadrado at right back? And to me, it seems like we are.
Yeah, I mean, it looks that way. The thing I think for the defense is, and this is why I think we haven't seen any fullback talk for like the last couple of weeks, is what kind of defense do you think Pirlo is going to play? And if it's a little bit of a mix, see, I like the idea that he could mix between the back 4 and like the 3-man defense, because then you could take Cuadrado and even Danilo and put them on the flanks, and then Danilo going forward, at least he can play a ball in. Like Sandro, who I think sometimes, because there's no competition at left back, has, gotten very content, he lapses a little bit.
Yeah.
And I just think that like, every player needs someone that's kind of like right behind you, right? And I think that for the last 2 years, it's just like he's a guarantee, right?
Well, there's no one there, and De Sciglio isn't good enough.
Yeah.
And I always bring this up, but that game against Spain in the Euros with Italy, I've never seen De Sciglio play that well in my life. It's crazy.
Yeah. Only plays well for Conte.
Send him to Merida. I would have no problem. We'll give him for 5 million, 10 million. They can take him. But
the thing is, like, if you're gonna play that, like, you could be okay with what you have. Keep Luca Pellegrini, maybe get rid of MDS. But if you're going to play a back 4, that has to change a little bit, because the reason why Cuadrado played so much last year is he's the only fullback that gets forward and like puts a cross in. Like Danilo is just a liability defensively, but he's like he has a little bit of a balance.
I would say Cuadrado as well is the liability. See, the reason why I don't like Cuadrado on the right back is for me it's simple. When you have a guy, and I know a lot of people don't talk about this, but this is how I see it. So a lot of people think that Alexandro doesn't necessarily want to get. I think, one, there's a disconnect between him and Ronaldo. That's one thing.
Yeah.
2, when I think he's told to sit back because of what Cuadrado presents. Now, I've seen in multiple occasions, and almost actually every game, that they've started one on one side and one on the other, that Cuadrado gets lost up in the offensive half.
Mm-hmm.
And really, the only way to counteract that is the left side to kind of shift and he play as a 3 at the back.
Yeah.
Now, there's been multiple times where I've seen it perfectly where Sandro just stays there, kind of shifts, and then the whole back kind of shifts over, and they act almost as like a back 3. Now, I think we got to get away with that kind of cross in the box. And I mean, if we get a Dzeko, okay, a different story. But I think we got to get away with that. I think Cuadrado is very liable at the back. I've said this multiple times. If we get like 2 really offensive players, I think we're going to concede a lot of goals. And I think it's going to be noticeable in the fact that, 2 CBs aren't able to handle all that pressure when you have a midfield that doesn't necessarily come back and help you out like it did this season.
Yeah.
So like having obviously Matuidi and Rabiot and Ramsey as well as Pjanic. Pjanic's got no legs, so he's not going to come back and help you. Matuidi does, but he's made a lot of mistakes in coming back and not helping out. So you're given odd numbers, and the other team usually takes advantage of that.
But
So I think it's tough.
Yeah, it is very tough because especially the way Sarri played,
Yeah,
really, really left that back four as a whole just kind of crippled. And you're right, you have a player that's not naturally a right back. The other thing I think that, which is so weird with this market, is the outside back position has become like this weird, Quadrado-like, fullback position. And there's names out there, but there's not like a name where you'd be like, yeah, we're gonna get this guy. He could be our right back for the next 4 to 5 years. It's like, well, like Gosens could be, but if we're playing a back four, like he's not he's not in the back four. Heidelberg was very good at Atalanta. Does that play, right? So I think same thing with like Serginho Dest. I know that's mostly paper talk, but Ajax to Juve, that's a big club, but this is a club that's talking about winning the Champions League. Like it's very different.
And you look at Telles was a guy that was linked, that was obviously sold. I believe Tagliafico was sold as well. So I think really there hasn't been a lot of talk. I'm assuming that we're going as is.
Yeah, that's my assumption right now, though. They always pick one position each year to screw over. I think it's gonna be fullback this year. There are a couple names. I don't know what. I might butcher this. Reguilon from Sevilla, the outside back. Yeah, so he's a name that kind of interests me a little bit. I don't know what his role at Real Madrid is going to be next year. Oriozola, who is a Bayern, again, that's another name. Like, what's his role going to be at Real Madrid next season? He's played now for Real Madrid, Bayern Munich. I know he's gotten a little bit of time each place, but it's an idea. Yeah. I don't. Again,
and they got to look at Marcelo and who's the other guy they have there? Carvajal.
Yeah, Carvajal. Yeah.
So they're going to be looking to, if not upgrade or sure up. So they might keep those guys as their backups, right? So I think that's a tough fullbacks, and this is why I say everyone wants to just dump Alexandro into the ocean, because again, another guy with value. Look how difficult it is.
Yeah.
For replacements.
Well, and also too, we're talking, bringing people in. Like when you look at the players we're linked with, right? We can bring those guys all in for under 30 million, maybe less. Yeah. A lot of these loan deals, free transfers. Artur was basically under 10 because of Pjanic. Yeah. So all these outside backs are going to cost money. Yeah. Currently, money is something that Juventus don't have. So unless Guzens comes in the swap, what are we going to do? And apparently Atalanta don't want to swap him, so that's kind of disappeared. So I think
now they're in Champions League too, right? Yeah. So you got to remember, I don't think they want to go out with a puff of white smoke. I think they want to at least try and challenge and add some pieces. I think they just added someone from Dynamo Kiev. I believe it was a midfielder. So with that extra money that they're getting now, so fullbacks, I think, is like you said. I think we're locked in that for depending on what they decide to do with Pellegrini. We'll see. But I say we're locked. I don't think anyone ever wanted De Sciglio. There's always, you're always going to get your Barca and your PSG rumor every year. And that means nothing. And we're stuck with them.
Yeah, the Barcelona one was fun just to picture Lionel Messi throwing a fit about losing the Champions League and then them signing MDS. A name that nobody really talks about, who I really rate, we probably couldn't get him from Napoli, is Di Lorenzo. I think Di Lorenzo.
Oh yeah, that's. I would love to have him, but fuck, I don't think that's happening. Fuck with De Laurentiis. I don't know, man. That would be
shocking.
That's a pipe dream for me, and that's going to be a very expensive deal if that were to happen. But you look at the Alan deal. I mean, 25 million is being rumored for Everton, like that's Italy is a weird place.
Yeah, like how much do you need to balance the books with some of these clubs? Like they could end up selling for less because they just need to get that wage off.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But I think that rests for that category. Kind of the youth players. I think these guys, I know Pirlo's talked about, evaluating their talent and seeing if they could play it. Romero, I think it's going to be what it is. I think he's going to be used as a bargaining chip. I think he's gone. Pellegrini, whether he wants to stay, go, again, something the club wants to use him as, I think we should keep him. I think you need the depth.
The papers, buying papers for what they're worth. I mean, again, that's a whole nother conversation. Seem to think that we're going to hold on to him. So,
but you never know. Like I said, a deal comes up and they want him in or whatever. We need the funds. That's the tough part.
Yeah.
Apparently, Kokolo, who's a CB, might get. I believe did he sign an extension? I want to say, but he is being looked at for the first team. Hans Cavilli, I believe, was at Perugia the previous season, and now has been obviously called back again. I don't know. Frabotta, we had Fagioli, Peters, Zanimacchia.
Yeah.
These guys, some were impressive, some less so, but Juve's not that club.
No, they aren't. I mean,
and I know a lot of people saying we should go in that direction. I don't see it. I really don't.
Italian clubs as a whole, really, just that's not their.
It takes a certain mentality and a certain amount of money that you have to spend. Yeah. And I find it's with teams that have great, systems play with the same system essentially for their lives.
Yeah.
You look at Ajax, I don't think they've really, maybe they've modernized,
yeah,
Cruyff football a little bit, but it's been the same identity, same with Barcelona.
That's a really good point, yeah.
Real Madrid has really played the same kind of style throughout its history. So, if we're talking about Italian football where you're playing Catenaccio, like it used to be, then you kind of what you need to build on. But no, I don't see these. I see these guys being bargaining chips, and I really don't see. I think, like I've told you before, I think at the beginning of the season we could go through a little bit of adversity, and then at that point, all these names go out the window because it's red alert. We need to focus on what's going to, get the job done. And that's usually what's been happening the last 3 years. It's been kind of like, okay, let's try and make this happen so we still get the Scudetto and maybe try for Champions League. And we don't focus on that. So when you're not in a stable place, all youth goes out the window.
Yeah, I agree. One point I'd like to make, and this goes back to our earlier segment about Pirlo, which you were just talking about, was like a style and a way of playing. That is something that I've tweeted about a lot the last year or two, which is this came back when Allegri was leaving. People were like, we need to play more beautiful, like attacking football. And I was like I understand that, but Juventus has always had like a very good core, a very good defense, and they've still managed to score goals. So I think that one thing I would like to see Pirlo get back to is, tightening the back line, not giving up a lot of goals, and scoring, playing beautiful football, but like in the Berlin team where they didn't give up any goals, but they still put 2, 3, 4 away during games. I think we can very much do that. And I would like to see Juve, and maybe Pirlo's the guy, maybe it's the next coach in line, but Juve get back to kind of like what they are known for, Granada, that never say die, Juventus way, and move forward with that.
Yeah, and I think that's just perfect. I think when you go into a game, you should be thinking that you can beat anybody, and I think we've lost that completely. I think we go into games scared. And we've gotten to the point where now we're the team that has everything to lose instead of the team that has nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And that's just a horrible mentality. And I think that's why we've seen the performances that we have now.
Yeah.
Lastly, players to go.
Cool.
I think it's quite simple. I think Khedira's got to be gone. However we make that happen. Higuain, we got to make that. Obviously, Inter Miami's been calling again. Kind of some reports that have been talking about, but who knows if that's true or not.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, like I was mentioning before, the Cuadrado and Kulusevski being in the team, I think you got to try and move Bernardeschi and Douglas Costa.
Yes. Yeah.
And then lastly, I think Rugani and Descidio, I mean, see who wants them and see if you can get them off the books first. Rugani, it's going to be tough, I think, because with the injury we have and Romero probably bringing in more money than him and having more interest in him, he's going to be the guy that likely goes instead of Rugani. Plus, Rugani's Italian, so it gives us the numbers there. Same with Descidio. I think it's going to be tough. I don't know who wants him. I don't think anybody wants him.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure, like I said, with the Pellegrini, I'm not optimistic on that. So if a deal comes up where we have to get rid of Pellegrini, there's no way that Descidio's going. And that's just how it's going to sit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those first four names, Khedira, Higuain, obviously, who looks set to go, Bernardeschi, Douglas Costa. I think that it's time. I like Bernardeschi. He plays very well for the national team. He needs a reboot. And I think the club, need to move on from him because Kulusevski is a very similar player to what Bernardeschi was when he showed up.
Right.
So I think Douglas Costa, again, there's not enough reward for what, the injuries come with. Maybe this new physio, apparently the rumors are that, he doesn't, his players' muscle injuries go down by 80%. Maybe he'll help him. But for me personally, I just think Douglas Costa, it's a waste. And I also think Douglas Costa is very overhyped.
So we hired a witch doctor is what you're telling me.
That's what the Italian papers claim. But yeah, so I would like to throw in Aaron Ramsey in that mix too.
I was going to say
Aaron Ramsey, but look, same thing as Douglas Costa. He's hurt a lot, and Aaron Ramsey when he plays, Juventus look better with him. But again, it's when he plays.
Right.
So I don't also see him playing it between Rabiot, Bentancur, and Arthur. If the season started tomorrow, that's probably your midfield three. Ramsey doesn't get in that team.
That's a fair point. Yeah, fair point. I think.
Yeah.
I was gonna say though, like you said, that's kind of my dark horse to move. I think if the right deal happens where you could swap them with let's say an English club, which has been rumored, I think you have to move whether or not you think he's expressed himself in the way he has properly. I mean, he's looked good in certain situations. He's made pretty good runs. This last few months where we've had the COVID restart, he's been a shadow of himself and he's been injured. So, I mean, to me, again, the right opportunity, I have no problem saying yes to a deal that includes him. But again, if that deal happens in the first place. So just lastly, before we kind of get into a question that was brought, again, we'll actually get into it now. So it's about Dzeko. Why do you think he is or isn't the right man for Juve? I think we've kind of discussed that for the most part. I think age is a question. I think contract is a question.
Yeah. And
whether those two things can be rectified and what role he's going to have in the team is rectified.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way. If he's willing to sit on the bench or come into games at key moments when, like you said, we play an Olympiacos or a team that's kind of a bigger team that we need some physicality up top. If he's okay with that, then hey, I have no problem. I think they should look to bring that contract down quite a bit. Try and get it around 5 million, save a couple million for wherever. And maybe only have it a 2-year deal. I think that would be perfect. 2 for 10. But that's kind of my thoughts, and I think you kind of echoed the same thing there, Louis.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, that's all I have to say on Dzeko.
But so the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about it, and it's kind of, it's been always on my mind, journalistic integrity, all this transfer news, and we kind of talked about it at the beginning of or at the beginning as well during the pre-show of the podcast. But you hear all these names, right? We hear Romeo Agresti, we hear Fabrizio Romano, Monblano, Corriere della Sera, Corriere dello Sport, Gazzetta dello Sport, Tutto Sport. You hear all these names, and it's quite funny because, like you mentioned earlier, we're in this short window, and everything is kind of news is whirling. And I've stated this in the past. This is the worst time of year, whether it's a normal summer transfer window or whether it's a shortened like now or it's a winter. I try and shut my mind off as much as possible, kind of focus on what the team's doing, how the team looks. Period. I don't like to talk unless it's signed, unless Juve announces it's not done. That's my opinion. Doesn't matter what they say. So, a lot of it, what I've seen is, and you look at even some of the Juve accounts, some of the bigger accounts, it's like they're bringing the same interview, they're bringing the same kind of journalists, spewing the same kind of shit. And it's like all clickbait. And it's like, what pisses me off the most is this kind of like warship mentality certain guys are getting. And it's like, I've seen over the last 3 years, people throw things in the wind. And they're just waiting for it to catch. Guardiola, Zidane. Like,
to a certain degree, the journalist's job is to throw things into the wind. But there's people like Monblano who are out there saying we're going to get Pep Guardiola. Like,
he's going to be a Juve coach. He's not going to tell you when, but he's going to be a Juve coach. And that's the key thing that always gets me, because it's like, well, you've essentially said from here to infinity, you're going to be right.
Yeah, exactly. Or you're going to be wrong and you're going to be like, well, I never said a date. I meant last year.
Exactly. So it's to me, that's what gets ridiculous. To me, not that I don't respect any of the journalists. To me, it doesn't matter who your name is. I don't care how many times you've been right. The next time they can always be wrong. And that's just their profession. It's like the weatherman. You're paid to be wrong. So to me, whether you get a take from Di Marzio or you get a take from Fabrizio Romano, to me, it doesn't matter.
There's only two you should ever take, religiously. That is Romeo Argista and Romano, because Romano will sit on whatever his news is until it's concrete. Romeo only tweets when it's about Juve. Like, he tweets it maybe once or twice a day, and it's literally just whatever he's heard for the day. Like, his news on Suarez was, hey, there's nothing there, but keep an eye on Suarez. There could be something, which was great journalism, because it's like saying, or Gazzetta would take that and be like, Suarez to Juve, like
imminent.
So I think those two. There's I don't know if it's an account or a journalist, but there's a Nico Sierra that keeps popping up. He's a little late on the news, but like maybe like a couple seconds, couple minutes late. But a lot of what he said has had some concrete with like some of the bigger names. But those are like the only two. Di Marzio is good for anyone but Juve, but in recent years he's kind of struggled with getting the Juve transfers right.
Well, that's what apparently a lot of people have been saying, and that I've noticed on Twitter that have been that is being talked about, is him kind of making a mistake. And I'm like, yeah, but so does everybody else. Like, I mean, there was only so many people that knew about Ronaldo. There's only so many people that jumped in, that were willing to take the jump. And that's the thing. It's whether you're willing to take that leap. And then it just doesn't be, it isn't journalism. It's just, freak picking. Freak guessing.
Pick a name and trying to get some money and get some headlines,
Yeah, it's all about the clicks, and I know, I mean, obviously you're in the US, so you know all about clickbaiting, the news, and this and that, and it's like
my favorite one. I was talking to Al about this yesterday. Probably the funniest thing I've seen in the last 5 years was the Gazzetta report where we're going to play a 3-5-2 with Dzeko in the hole behind Ronaldo and Dybala. I opened it up and I just laughed. Like, I could not take that seriously whatsoever.
I don't know. They're just, it's like everybody's got like infinite ammo now because it's so short. that we get into these positions where it's like, okay, like again, the Ronaldo Dybala saga, that whole thing was like, okay, we're bored. Let's play with something. Let's get our clicks. Let's get our money, and let's get out of here. Because it's funny how fast it went up. Ronaldo or Dybala selling, and then at the end it was just like a complete silence. It was like Dybala's manager comes out. Nope, it's not happening. This was never talked about. We're still in discussions, and then it was just it was crickets for like the next week about that whole thing.
I feel really weird because I feel like I'm in the minority that like really enjoys having Cristiano Ronaldo on the team. Maybe it's because I don't argue with fanboys at all. Like they'll come up my notifications, I just don't pay them any mind. But
it's fun, man. It's fun.
Yeah, like I guess maybe because it was in college, like I watched him with Real Madrid win all those titles, and I was just like I've just always like really enjoyed him. I wouldn't call myself a Ronaldo fan, but like I've enjoyed him here. But like these journalistic takes, they're just like we said, they're clickbait, and they're trying to make a name, and they're probably getting stuff from clubs because I assume Juventus and Merida are trying to mess with each other, and Juventus might be saying, hey, we're going to, plant this Vidal story because we want Merida to overpay for him, and that helps us in the long run,
Yeah, some assistant leaks this, some or that, and this, and some social media person says this or that. I mean, that's what it is. That's what they're getting their information from, is from certain people in the club, and how honest they decide to be is their choice, right? So, no, for me, it's like, the Ronaldo thing is, for someone who's getting 31 million, you have to hold them to that standard.
Yeah.
And what I don't like about that's what gets me the most. I mean, I don't have a problem with, people think I have a problem with Ronaldo on the team. That's not the case. If you're going to hold him to a certain standard, it has to be both ways. So if you're going to give him praise, you're going to have to take the give and take on both sides.
Yeah.
So everyone likes to say, okay, he scored all the knockout goals. But, okay, so if his job is to come in and score the knockout goals, why does he miss a free header against Lyon that sent us through? So you could say, yes, he scored all the knockout goals, but those knockout goals cost us 8.8 million a goal. And that's what he was paid to come in for.
Well, what I would say was, where I'm critical on Cristiano Ronaldo is I'm more critical of the move itself because
that as well.
Ronaldo's a great player, and I think it's very hard. You could say like, hey, his antics against Milan, awful, right? Publicly not coming out and apologizing. You should, like when we talk about Dybala throwing temper tantrums, that happens. But those players tend to publicly come out, apologize. I assume he did, but maybe he didn't. We don't know like if he did privately or not.
Yeah, in the dressing room.
But I think on the Lyon thing, I think and I understand criticizing the free header and stuff. But I think on the Lyon thing, there are a lot of players that just don't show up for us in those matches. And I think that, criticizing like the one or two players who do, like it was the old argument that like Paul Dybala doesn't show up in Europe. It's like, really? Like,
yeah, but this is my argument. Bernardeschi doesn't make $31 million a season and doesn't hamper our transfer market.
Yeah, I understand that. But Bernardeschi also didn't score 60 goals in 2 years,
Fair enough.
Ronaldo in 2 years has scored more goals than like our team did in the whole year, almost.
No. I get that, but my point of contention is, if we're bringing you on to, if you're the club, if you're the player that is supposed to take us over the line, and we're gonna bend so far forward to give you $31 million.
I understand. No, I understand.
You can't not take the criticism and say, well, when you scored the 3, he gets all the praise in the world for the Atletico Madrid game.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden that he didn't score the 3, I hear crickets on about him.
It's a fair argument, and I was as mad as anyone when he missed that. I get mad every time he takes a free kick and he fucks it up. Excuse my language, but yeah.
No, like I said, like I've said before on this podcast, it's all fair games. You can swear, you can do whatever you want. But anyways, like in terms of that too, you look at it. He had a free kick. He had 4 guys on 3 in the box, and someone with a supposedly Champions League mentality misses that completely and strikes the wall. Like I was yelling at my TV. I'm like, you have a guy wide open sitting in the box. They all think you're going to shoot, chip
Yeah.
the ball over,
Yeah.
and
I think that.
hey, it's not a given,
Yeah.
but that's better odds than his kicks.
I think because the fanboys think that he's like this perfect deity, that we as a fan base, I've done it before, start to like micromanage a little bit of it because we micromanage.
Push back.
Yeah.
Push back.
That's what I mean. So it's like
Oh, I agree with that.
ideally he's a striker, like he wants to score goals. Like people would be like, he should have played in lacrosse. And I was like, you don't pay Ronaldo $31 million a year to slot in Higuain. You hope that he scores the goal, right? You know, like maybe I'm wrong on that, but you know, in some cases I'll say like I'll look at the build-up and I'll be like, wow, like why aren't you playing the ball there, right? But then there's some cases where it's like when Bernadeschi's like, you know, missing sitters, and you're like, oh, like I'm pretty glad he shot from that angle. Then you know, like.
But the thing is too, like I come after everybody.
Yeah,
I don't leave anybody behind the shed. Like everybody comes out to the party.
I think you're pretty fair. There are people that are pretty fair. Like Al's pretty fair on it.
Trust me, I'm only not fair is when I'm in a conversation with a Ronaldo fan and they keep insisting. And then I just say whatever the hell. Like I said, I've said it multiple times. Whether you want to believe me or not, I mean that's up to you. But
my biggest gripe with that move, and it's a similar thing that I said with De Ligt. 'Cause obviously, we need a player like De Ligt. But after you sign Demiral and Romero, who are what's that 60 million put together, then why did you go get someone for 80 million? Like you know what I mean? It's like you could have eliminated both those two transfers and then just got De Ligt. Now, thank God we ended up getting Demiral because Chiellini got hurt.
Yeah.
But hindsight's a little different. The same thing with kind of Ronaldo, right? You know, we can make this move, but was that necessarily the move that was going to put us over? It might have last year if we had like a concrete midfield. Yeah. But you could look back to, like, I was watching our Champions League highlights from the year after Cardiff, which is 17-18, I think. And we were still pretty good. I mean, we had Real Madrid in that game if that's not that penalty call. So you're looking at that team and you're saying, like, hey,
that's almost there.
Pieces away. So I think there's a good argument to be made about the transfer itself. And I think that's where Juve fans are frustrated because they were given this like golden egg, right? What they didn't realize was the golden egg was given to a team that has a ton of like cracks in it. And
we were a little overrated. I think we thought we were a little further than where we actually were.
Yeah,
and I think that was the main problem. But anyways, man, we'll get to this last segment here, and we'll get you on your way. Thanks for coming on. But so obviously, what I like to do, and I actually haven't been because we've had kind of different, some similar guests than what we've had. Obviously, a new guest. So what I like to do, I like to listen to some stories. I mean, you heard around Turin, he dropped a story about Juve in the club, and I thought it was after a Scudetto, I believe, winning game. And I thought it's just a great story. So I like to hear, whether you've been to the stadium or not, whether you've watched Juve in North America or whatever, or even just a memorable Juve moment that you've spent with your family or someone that you've really you like to watch games with.
Yeah.
The floor is yours. I know Bruno even was talking about recently. He went to the pre-match. He threw a scarf on the field, and which he talked about obviously in his podcast, and they actually escorted him out to get it signed. So I mean, hey, that was pretty funny. I thought it was a good story you brought up, and but yeah, man, the floor is yours.
I get to. I'll make them quick. I've never actually been to the stadium.
No worries.
It's going to be my goal this year, and COVID hit, and unfortunately, so I hope to go as soon as they reopen.
Yeah.
I got dual citizenship, so I can escape the U.S. whenever I want. It's pretty nice. But
nice.
My two stories are, the first one is with Juve SoCal when I lived in L.A. Shout out to those guys, Saeed. That great group of people.
Exactly.
And so we took over what was like an English pub. I think it was like a Man City bar. And the year I was there, we invaded it. But there was a game. I think it was the Tottenham game. I brought a friend of mine who was a Bayern fan, right? And Bayern's playing at the same time. And he was like, we're going to watch it together. I was like, hey, just so you know, there's a lot of Juventus fans, whatever. And we're playing that game. And that away leg was awful, right? Until Allegri that ridiculous change when he double swapped he brought out, I think it was Asamoah and Lichtsteiner, and he turned everything into a 3-5-2, and like Lichtsteiner probably had his last good Juventus game, not the Real Madrid game. But I just remember the atmosphere in that place, not just when we got the equalizing goal from Higuain, but the winner for Dybala. I like jumped in a bunch of guys' arms. We were all like hugging each other. All of a sudden, I look and my friend who's a Bayern fan is like hugging random. Yeah, he's not even watching the Bayern game anymore. And when Barzali made that clearance on the line, we celebrated that like Ronaldo's bicycle kick.
Yeah.
So, like it was wild. So that was a good just like environment. Watching those Champions League games, even though that year didn't finish how we would have liked in the Champions League. Just I'll never forget that moment. It's the closest I've ever been to being in a stadium where there's a bunch of Juventinos just embracing each other in a crazy goal. And the second one is when I was in college, I was the only kid in my dorm that watched soccer. So I would get up 9 a.m. to watch, or I'd watch on a Saturday afternoon. I never missed a game. But Juventus is playing Torino in between Berlin and Cardiff, so that'd be 15-16, I think. And it's the game where Cuadrado scores the goal on the line, where it's like you're watching this game, they're down 1-0, you're like, this is awful. They get to 1-1, you're like, I just want to draw on that game. And Pogba, has that ridiculous touch. He plays it out wide to Evra, and it stops on the line, and like I could hear my roommates to this day like still talk about it. They could even go, and I was like, and then all of a sudden it goes in, and I jumped up in the air. I ran right out of my apartment, through the common room, past my roommates, down the hallway. I was yelling all the way to the bar. Like I was just like I ran around campus. I was so excited. I was on a high for like a whole year that year. Just
that's amazing.
Game.
What school did you go to? USC?
Xavier University, which is
Xavier.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I work in the film industry, so I moved to California for and then I hung out with Juve SoCal, and I moved back to Pittsburgh. That's where I'm from. So
awesome, man. No, that's a great story. That was almost like me a couple nights ago. I think I woke the whole neighborhood. I was watching the Bruins play, and we tied it to go to OT, and holy shit, I lost my mind. But with Juve, it's been a while. Honestly, I've noticed it's been, to me, the little bit of atmosphere we've had has been kind of dampered. I don't know about you, but I know you're on the La Panquina, correct?
Yeah.
So I mean, I love all those. I love watching those because it's so similar to the way I used to be. Now it's a little bit different just because the way we've been playing. But yeah, I know at the beginning, like those first 5-6 years. Holy shit, man.
And I think like for people that don't remember them fondly, or maybe people that like came in after the first 5-6 years, I mean, just the craziness of here was a team that finished 7th, won the title under Conte. They were undefeated, still had question marks. And then Allegri, who was this like, he destroyed Milan is what everyone said, comes in 2 finals in 3 years. I mean, and that season I was just talking about, the Torino game saved the season, because after that they won like 19 straight games. It just the enthusiasm was so different. But I told Alan this because I watched the game like Conte. Like for La Panquina, I had to sit down because there's nowhere in my apartment to put my laptop. But I will stand through a whole match. No one can talk to me, and I just stand and watch the game the whole way through. Even if we're losing like 4-0, I watched it the whole way through that way.
See, it's a little bit different because my setup is a bit different, but usually when we had like a mantle where the TV was on, and exactly, like I would literally like post up like just to the left of the TV and just been like just yelling and just like moving around, and like exactly like you, like I can't sit still because I'm shouting. You can see the whole pitch. You know exactly when someone's not making a run and when they are. You're telling them where to go, and I know my mom will, attest to this, but as much as you try and, give them instructions, they still can't hear you, but hey, I'll do it anyways. That's just how it is.
My
But
buddy
yeah,
who's a Bayern fan always says it's dangerous to watch games with you because if Juve scores, you're liable to like jump on top of someone, whoever the closest person is.
yeah, that's another reason why I stay indoors. I stay by myself, so I can't. Yeah, you can't hurt anyone.
I get a life.
But anyways, man, it's been awesome having you on. I appreciate you coming on. We're gonna have you definitely in the future. There's so much more to coming up, and again, like Al always says, if you want to reach out and drop some lines about Juve, depending on whether that be transfer or a game or whatnot, just reach out. I know a lot of you guys have been asking to come on, so that's great for me. Like I said, it's gonna help me out. Check out Louis' channel at Louis DeVito, or his Instagram or his Twitter. I'm guessing your Insta's the same, correct?
Yeah.
So yeah, check that out, guys. Always good takes, always good conversation. Another guy that is always good to chat Juve, whether that be in person or online. But yeah, guys, we're gonna start picking it up. I'm gonna start. The train has left the station. We're gonna get some momentum and continue on. We're about 19 days away. I believe the schedule is gonna be coming out on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I look forward to that. We're going to do a full season preview, maybe a couple season previews, depending on how much interest there is. And I know we have one down, but yeah, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for the support. We're gonna get it. I'm gonna find a way to get that Del Piero jersey out. Like I said, I'm gonna figure it out. Keep an eye for that series about the brand, the sneakers, the kicks, the jerseys. That'll come out soon. And yeah, guys, as always, we're almost at 500 on my personal at Daniel Negro, Instagram, Twitter. Juventinita DAL as always. YouTube, Podbean, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, all your favorites. And like I said, drop me a message if you want anything else. I have no problem working that out for you. And last but not least, the edits. Yeah, they've been coming off really good. A lot of people have been liking them. If you want any player done in a specific way, just send me a DM. We'll make it how we'll make something nice for you to put on your phone or a background on one of your devices. So please let me know that. And as always, guys, stay tuned. And fino alla fine, forza Juventus. Ciao.